Story 1: The Permanent Tomb of John Jones. John Edward Jones was a 26-year-old medical student. He was a husband and a father to a young daughter, with another baby on the way. On November 24, 2009, he was home in Utah for Thanksgiving and decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave with a group of friends and family. It was a place he remembered fondly from his childhood, but it had been years since John, now a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound man, had been caving. The group entered the cave around 8 p.m. About an hour in, John, his brother Josh, and 2 friends decided to find a popular feature called the Birth Canal, a notoriously tight but manageable passage. John went first, finding what he thought was the entrance and wriggling in head first. He pushed himself forward with his hips and stomach, but quickly realized he'd made a terrible mistake. This wasn't the birth canal. It was an unmapped dead end. He tried to back out, but there was no room. The tiny fissure, just 10 by 18 inches, had him. He tried to exhale to shrink his chest and slide back, but it was no use. Gravity just pulled him deeper into the 70-degree downward slope. His arms were pinned under him. He was completely stuck. His brother Josh was the first to find him, seeing only John's feet sticking out of the hole. Josh grabbed his brother's legs and pulled, but it was useless. John just slid further in. All they could do was pray. "Save me from my wife and kids," John pleaded. Realizing how bad it was, Josh scrambled out of the cave to get help. The first rescuer, a volunteer named Susie, arrived around midnight. She was small enough to get near John, talk to him, and see his shoes, but she couldn't reach him. She could hear his panicked, labored breathing. He'd been trapped for over 3 hours upside down, 400 feet from the entrance and 100 feet below the ground. What followed was a massive 27-hour rescue attempt with dozens of volunteers. The plan was to use a system of ropes and pulleys to pull him out. They attached webbing to his legs, but the angle was all wrong, and the cave's soft clay walls offered no solid anchor points. Worse, being inverted was putting incredible strain on John's body. His heart was fighting gravity, struggling to pump blood out of his head. He stayed conscious for hours, talking to rescuers and even his wife, Emily, over a police radio. But as time dragged on, his condition got worse. His breathing became shallow. The team made one last desperate attempt. They managed to secure a pulley system and started to haul. For a moment, there was hope. John was moving. He was lifted several feet out of the tightest spot. The rescuers were ecstatic. They even managed to pass him a drink and talk for a moment. Then, disaster. One of the pulley anchors drilled into the soft cave wall failed under the strain. The rope went slack. John dropped back into the fissure, wedged even tighter than before. The psychological blow to the rescue team was devastating. For John, it was a death sentence. A rescuer named Brandon Kowalis was one of the last to get near him. He found John barely conscious, his breathing a deep, gurgling sound. Just before midnight on November 25th, after 27 agonizing hours, John's body gave out. A paramedic confirmed he had passed away from cardiac arrest. The ordeal was over, but one final heartbreaking decision remained. Getting John's body out was deemed too dangerous. With the agreement of his grieving family, Nutty Putty Cave would become his final resting place. A week later, the cave was permanently sealed with concrete. A plaque at the entrance now serves as a memorial, a permanent reminder of the absolute terror that can be waiting just one wrong turn away. Story 2. The Cave That Became a Carnival. Floyd Collins, an experienced caver since he was a kid, had a dream. Find a new entrance to the famous Mammoth Cave system that was closer to the main road. On January 30th, 1925, carrying only a kerosene lantern, he entered a small opening known as Sand Cave to explore. He squeezed through incredibly tight crawls, inching along on his stomach. Deep inside, he found what he was looking for, a huge chamber that screamed tourist dollars. But then his lantern started to flicker. Knowing he couldn't risk being plunged into total darkness, he turned back. It was on his way out that it all went wrong. As he shimmied through a narrow passage, his foot knocked a 27-pound rock loose from the ceiling. The rock fell, pinning his left ankle 55 feet below ground. As he struggled, more gravel fell around him, burying him up to his waist. He was trapped, 150 feet from the entrance, alone in the cold, silent dark. It wasn't until the next day that people noticed his coat still near the entrance and heard his faint cries. A few brave rescuers, including a young reporter named William Skeets Miller, managed to crawl to him, bringing food, water, and a light bulb to keep the darkness at bay. Miller's interviews with the trapped man were published in the newspaper and captured the nation's imagination. Soon, radio, a brand new technology, was broadcasting every update to a captivated audience. The story exploded. What started as a local emergency spiraled into a national spectacle. Thousands of people flocked to the site, transforming the area around Sand Cave into a bizarre carnival. Vendors sold food and souvenirs. The National Guard had to be called in to control the crowds, all while Floyd Collins lay trapped and freezing below. Rescuers tried everything. On February 4th, the situation went from dire to catastrophic. The passage leading to Floyd collapsed, cutting off all contact. No more food, no more water, no more light. The only hope left was to dig a new 55-foot vertical shaft straight down to where they thought he was. Miners worked around the clock, but the digging was slow. Days ticked by. After February 11th, Floyd's voice fell silent. Finally, on February 16th, after 17 long days, the rescue shaft broke through. A miner named Ed Brenner found Floyd's body cold and still. He had likely been dead for 3 to 5 days, succumbing to starvation, thirst, and hypothermia. The nation mourned, but the bizarre saga wasn't over. His body was initially left in the cave, then recovered 2 months later. In a macabre twist fitting the cave wars, his body was put on display in a glass-topped coffin in another cave, which became a successful tourist attraction. His corpse was even stolen at one point. It wasn't until 1989, 64 years after his death, that Floyd Collins was finally given a proper burial. His tombstone calls him the greatest cave explorer ever known, a tragic end for a man whose fight for life became a national entertainment. Story 3. The Icy Grave of Plura. Our next story takes us from the claustrophobic squeeze of dry caves to the crushing pressure of underwater cave diving. We're going to Norway, to the Plura Cave system, one of the longest water-filled caves in Europe. In the frigid winter of 2014, this beautiful but lethal place would become the site of a disaster, and then a secret, illegal mission driven by an unbreakable friendship. On February 6th, 2014, a team of 5 highly experienced Finnish divers prepared for a grueling expedition, a full traverse of the cave system. The dive was expected to take about 5 hours, reaching depths of over 130 meters, that's 425 feet, through freezing water and sharp, narrow passages. The team split into 2 groups. The first pair, Jari Huotarinen and Jari Uusmäki, went in first. The second group of 3 followed shortly after. The plan was to descend, navigate the deep section, and exit from a different opening. But at the deepest point of the cave, something went terribly wrong. The second group of divers came upon a horrifying sight. Jari Huotarinen, one of the first divers, was stuck, his equipment tangled in a narrow restriction over 110 meters down. His dive buddy, Jari Uusmäki, was desperately trying to free him. What happened next was a cascade of failures in one of the planet's most hostile environments. As Uusmäki struggled to help his friend, he likely overexerted himself and started running out of air. In the chaos, it's believed he either panicked or his rebreather malfunctioned. The second team watched in horror as he too died. Now the 3 surviving divers were in grave danger themselves. They were at an extreme depth, their friends were gone, and their own mission was in tatters. They made the brutal decision to turn back, but their ordeal wasn't over. During the frantic ascent, one of the divers suffered a severe case of decompression sickness. Another nearly ran out of air and had to make a dangerously fast ascent. All 3 survivors were hospitalized. Norwegian authorities immediately closed the cave and brought in a team of elite British rescue divers, including Rick Stanton of future Thai cave rescue fame. But the team deemed a recovery operation too dangerous. The bodies of Jari Huotarinen and Jari Uusmäki, they decided, would be left in the cave. But for their friends, leaving them behind wasn't an option. In the tight-knit world of cave diving, there's a sacred rule: you don't leave your people behind. Patrick Grönqvist, one of the survivors, promised Jari's wife they would bring them home. And so, they began planning a secret, illegal mission. They assembled a team of Finnish and Norwegian divers, a massive logistical undertaking conducted in complete secrecy. They ferried in tons of equipment and meticulously planned every detail. On March 26th, the recovery mission began. The divers returned to the deepest part of the cave, the exact place where their friends had died. The process was grueling and emotionally shattering. They carefully cut the first body free and began the slow, 5-hour journey to the surface. The next day, they returned for the second body. After 5 days, the mission was complete. They had recovered their friends. The team went directly to the police and told them what they had done. While they had broken the law, no charges were ever filed. The story, captured on film by one of the divers, became a documentary called Diving into the Unknown. It's a testament to the extreme dangers of cave diving, but also an incredible story of friendship and the lengths people will go to honor a promise. Story 4. The Deluge at Mossdale Caverns. The place was Mossdale Caverns in Yorkshire, England. Mossdale is not for beginners. Even today, it's known as one of Britain's most dangerous cave systems, infamous for its long, wet crawls and its tendency to flood violently. On that Saturday, a team of 10 experienced cavers led by Dave Adamson entered the cave. They were a confident group, split into 2. A group of 4, including Adamson's fiancée Morag Forbes, planned a shorter trip. The main party of 6 intended to push on to the far end of the cave. The smaller group finished their trip and exited around 5 p.m. But outside, the beautiful summer day had vanished. A violent thunderstorm was dumping torrential rain onto the moors above the cave. The stream that normally trickled into the cave entrance, Mossdale Beck, was now a raging torrent. Morag Forbes, sensing the danger to her fiancé and his friends still inside, went back to the cave entrance. What she saw was a nightmare. The entrance was completely underwater, swallowed by a furious cascade of churning brown water. Realizing the horrifying truth, she ran 2.5 miles across the desolate moor to get help. A massive rescue operation was launched, involving over 300 people. But they were powerless. The water levels made entering the cave impossible. Their only hope was to try and divert the entire stream away from the cave mouth, a monumental task in the middle of the night. It wasn't until the next day that the floodwaters receded enough for anyone to get inside. The rescue teams didn't find survivors. They found a scene of utter devastation. Deep inside, they discovered the bodies of 5 of the cavers. The 6th was found the next day. The 6 experienced cavers had been overtaken by the wall of water on their way out. In the tight, inescapable passages, they never stood a chance. The tragedy was complete, but the cavern had one last cruel twist. The coroner ruled that it was simply too dangerous to remove the bodies. So the 6 men were left where they lay, and the entrance to Mossdale Caverns was sealed with concrete, turning the entire cave system into a tomb. 4 years later, with the family's agreement, a team of their fellow cavers re-entered. They moved the bodies of their friends to a higher chamber and buried them there, giving them a final resting place inside the cave that had claimed their lives. The Mossdale Caverns tragedy is a horrifying reminder of the raw, untamable power of nature lurking just beneath our feet. Story 5. The Impossible Rescue in Thailand. Not all terrifying caving stories end in tragedy. Sometimes, against all odds, the darkness gives way to hope. Our final story takes us to Tham Luang Cave in northern Thailand in June of 2018. It's a story that held the world captive for 18 days, involving 12 young boys, their football coach, and an unprecedented, seemingly impossible rescue mission. On June 23, 2018, 12 members of the Wild Boars junior football team, aged 11 to 16, and their coach went exploring in the Tham Luang Cave after practice. But as they ventured deep inside, the monsoon season arrived with a sudden, furious downpour. The cave system began to flood rapidly, blocking their exit and trapping them miles from the entrance. When the boys didn't come home, their parents raised the alarm. Bicycles and football boots found near the cave entrance confirmed their worst fears. The initial search was hampered by the same rising muddy water that had trapped the boys. Days turned into a week, then longer. Hope began to fade. Then 9 days after they disappeared, a breakthrough. 2 expert British cave divers, Rick Stanton and John Valanthan, were navigating the treacherous passages. After surfacing in a chamber deep inside, their lights fell upon the huddled shapes of all 13 lost souls. They were alive, perched on a muddy ledge about 2.5 miles from the entrance. The world erupted in relief, but the celebration was short-lived. The elation quickly gave way to a stark and terrifying realization. Finding them was the easy part. Getting them out would be a nightmare. The boys were weak, and none of them knew how to swim, let alone dive through miles of narrow submerged passages. As engineers worked to pump billions of liters of water out of the cave, An international team of more than 10,000 people, including over 100 expert divers, converged on the site to help. The danger of the operation was tragically highlighted on July 6th. Saman Kunan, a 37-year-old former Thai Navy SEAL, died after running out of air while delivering oxygen tanks to the boys. His death was a devastating blow. If the journey was that lethal for an experienced professional, what chance did the children have? With more heavy rain on the way, the rescue commander made a gut-wrenching decision. They had to get them out now. The plan was audacious. Each boy would be fitted with a full face mask, given a sedative to prevent panic, and guided out by 2 rescue divers. The extraction began on July 8th. The world held its breath. That first day, 4 boys were rescued. On July 9th, 4 more. Finally, on July 10th, the last 4 boys and their coach were brought out to safety. The news sparked a global celebration. It was a triumph of human ingenuity, international cooperation, and sheer courage. The story of the wild boars is terrifying not because of its ending, but because of the razor-thin margin between a miraculous rescue and a devastating tragedy. It shows that even in the deepest, darkest places, the will to survive and the bravery of selfless people can achieve the impossible. These stories are a heavy reminder of what's lurking right under our feet. The mix of human ambition and the unforgiving nature of these places creates situations that are almost too terrifying to imagine. If you appreciate us digging into these dark and mysterious topics, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps us bring you more tales from the edge of human experience. Now let's continue into the abyss